Okay, I'm going to show the group. All right. Okay, so here are the cards. Numero uno, dos, and tres. So let's get rolling here. I'm going to step back here in my beautiful platform, my hot tub, or AKA Quadcopter landing zone. So flying quadcopters is a lot of fun, but it does take a little bit of research, skill, and practice to learn how to fly. Both the FAA and the Owner's Manual stress safe flight. Tune in and I'll show you the basics there. In this video, I will show you the very basics of flying a small unmanned aerial system. They're also called USASs. And I'll show you how to prep for a flight, check your surroundings, and then fly. So what we've got here is a DJI Mavic 2 Pro. It's in its case, so I'll take and pull it out of its case real quick. This is the way it comes, basically prepped for flight. So you can notice it's in a nice compact form there. So to get everything kind of rolling here, we'll open up all the extensions on here. Some of them are a little bit tricky, but roll them around as such. All right. And then I'll set this in a nice spot in which we can kind of operate it at safely. So here we go. We open up all the props on here. A couple things to check for just to make sure you got a nice clear area in which you're going to operate these things from. Just a quick point of order. The props on these can spin at around roughly 7,000 RPMs. They'll change in speed and tempo to adjust how it's actually moving around. So just something to be wary of. You don't want to come in contact with the props. The other thing to note about this unit here is that it flies at about 45 miles an hour. So I'd like to point out that it indeed is not a toy. So there is a case up here to protect the camera gimbal. So what you got to do is pull this housing off, and you do it just as such like that. And that will allow the gimbal to free float so that the camera can kind of move around and stay directed no matter what you're doing. So it's pretty easy to check the battery on these. You push on these two buttons here, pull it right out. To test for the how much battery juice you've got, just click the button once. There are 4 rings on it, kind of reminds me of an Xbox. It's a little faster though. So we'll drop that back in. We've got good battery life on there. And then I'll pull out the controller here. So a couple things. Right now, the way I'm going to fly this, usually the camera or the phone that I plug in is being used for the video right now. But I could actually plug the phone in down here and use that as a screen on here. But I'm not going to at this point in time. So much like the battery on there, you can test the battery on the controller as well. You just click the button once and it'll tell you what the battery life is. So certainly when you're dealing with something battery operated, part of flying it safely is having adequate battery power. So I'm going to pop the antennas up to get the unit to turn on. Make sure everything's functional there. Double click on the power button here. You can see it's kind of spinning up there a little bit. All right. So oh yeah, now it's talking to me. And then double click on the button here on the actual controller itself. And it'll go through connection mode. There's a lot of safety built into these things. It's got forward and reverse sensors and cameras. It's got side cameras and an additional camera on top. As long as you run it in the basic mode here, there's 3 different mode settings for how this aircraft actually handles. One's for shooting video with, so it's real slow. It allows the gimbal to do some real graceful maneuvers there. And then there's just a sport mode where this thing will get up to like 45 miles an hour. Now the thing doesn't come to a halt immediately, so a couple points of order. You have to be 16 years old to operate these things. You do have to get a FCC, or excuse me, an FAA ID number. It does need to be attached to the equipment. You can only fly in day and basically line of sight. So 400 feet's the ceiling limit as far as elevation. And line of sight, well, let me tell you what, these things are pretty small. They're pretty hard to see at several hundred feet. So those are the basic ideas there. So next thing is the actual controller. So we're having a little bit of magnetic interference here. I did do a test flight a minute ago. I did have a little issue trying to get it land, so we'll see how well that works out for us. But to get it to actually toggle on so that you can fly it, you take both of these controllers here and you point them this direction, each of them, right? So that's what I'm going to do, and we'll see the props kick up there. A couple other safety features, just like a lot of things, it's easy to get distracted today. So these have two important features on them. One of them is a pause button, so you can pause operation, so even if you accidentally hit one of the controllers while it's in flight, it's not going to do something that you didn't intend to do. And the other is called a RTH, or return to home feature. So there's a lot of beautiful things kind of going on with these new units. Matter of fact, there are like 6 onboard computers on this thing, or processors. So we'll get it to get into flight mode. I'll just demonstrate with it this way. So I hold them there. You can see that the props kick up. And then we'll just look at some basic operations. So I'm going to press upward on this joystick, or this thumbstick here, and that will take it into flight. And there go my cards. So one of the things you'll notice is kind of the gimbal, the camera kind of stays your direction as it's moving around a little bit. So I'm not going to do much for flight here. I just wanted to kind of demonstrate getting it up in the air, but it is important to pay attention to what's going on, not get wound up in conversations with people when you're operating these things. A small movement on the thumbstick and I can fly this into myself or somebody else. Outside of that, there are a lot of other things that you can learn about these things, but those are some of the basics there. Hold on just a second, let me grab my cards. While I'm distracted, so as you notice, I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot to get one of these. I mean, they don't need the attention that a true hobbyist helicopter or an airplane would have. I mean, you just have to be able to make sure that your batteries are well charged, get it in the air, and you can kind of set it and forget it at certain locations. I mean, I want to take it up a couple hundred feet. We've got it up about 60 feet above me right now. And I let go of it, and it's hooked up to probably about 13 different GPS satellites at this point. So it's pretty well positioned as to where it is as far as elevation and azimuth on the planet. Other things to be mindful of: windy days are not good for these things. High winds, anything over 10 miles an hour is probably not good. And the final thing, and we're kind of running into it now, is 30 minutes before sunrise or after sunrise, and 30 minutes before sunset. So let me grab my cards again. I wasn't anticipating them blowing over here. So that being said, we've prepped for flight. We've checked our surroundings, and we've actually taken the quadcopter up for a quick spin there. So I'll see if we can get it to land, and when we do, that'll be the end of our intro video here. And I just want to thank you for watching this short video on safe flight of UAS's. And we'll see what it does here. Let it float a little bit. Well, maybe it'll come down. Or maybe it won't. Well, it's evidently detecting some obstructions from what the flight controllers are telling me. But hey, thanks for watching there, folks.